Welcome back to the Iron Insight. Thank you for starting your week off right with the Iron Insight every Monday morning at 4 a.m. I'm Bryn Welds,
And I'm Andrew Nichols, the co-host.
and today we're sitting down with Mr. Nathan, Castro Welding LLC, right?
Absolutely. Yep. How's it going?
Good, how are you?
Awesome, man.
That's good. So before this podcast, we were talking a little bit before about where you're from. You're from what did you say? Coral something?
Coral
Yeah,
Springs
so
is what
I,
he
I
said.
was
Yeah.
born in I was born in Coral Springs. I was born in Broward County, Florida, and then when I was like 2 to 3, my parents moved up here. I've been in Massachusetts ever since. I work a lot in the Boston area. So yeah, that's the main area I work at right now.
Do you like it up there? I've never been to Mass. Well, I'm not good on geography in on the northeast side or east side really at all, but I went to Washington D.C. That's the furthest east I've been.
Yeah, well, there's give and take, man, with everywhere you're at. There's pros and cons, but overall, I think uh, like a 6 out of 10 state. I'd say I definitely don't want to. It's definitely not my long term home, but uh, my parents decided to move here for the careers they did, so I got to make do with what I have. So,
Right. What's like kind of the typical work like here in Nebraska? It would be agriculture. What would it be in Massachusetts?
are you referring to the welding industry in particular, or just in general?
Welding industry.
For the welding industry, there's a lot of manufacturing. There's a lot of aerospace. Just north of the border, we have Sig Sauer, who manufactures firearms for the army and whatnot. Uh, we have GE. We have like, for an example, we have Electric Boat in Rhode Island. So it's all in this vicinity of New England. A lot of manufacturing for really important stuff. A lot of aerospace. And then aside from that, what I do for piping, there's a lot of mechanical contractors that do, whether it be hydronic HVAC systems, they do power piping, process piping, sometimes gas. It's not as common, obviously, but I've worked with a few companies who have done gas lines in Boston, um, and with the gas company. But yeah.
And are you doing a lot of prefab or are you going out in the field and installing it as well?
So it depends on what mechanical contract you work for. The one I'm currently working at, I do a lot of in the field position welds and in the field fabrication, which is essentially prefab anyways, but it's just a little bit different and a little bit easier because you're able to bolt everything up, just pull the measurement once, cut it, and then weld it in place. You know what I mean? But we have done a lot of prefab. Like I did a large prefab job, which was 16 inch. That's probably the biggest job I kind of spearheaded at this company so far. I was very blessed to have that opportunity, and that went pretty well. We were welding 16 inch sked 40 for a hydronic water system. It's basically like a chill water system, and then a lot of the stuff we do is gas, underground, or just piping directly to a building. Yeah,
And based off of kind of skimming through some of your social media posts, it was a lot of stick and a little bit of TIG.
that's it. That's the main thing. A lot of the mechanical contractors over here haven't really picked up on the fact that they can use MIG welding, or they don't. Like, for an example, just the fact of a certified welder versus a qualified welder, they don't really
Mm,
understand that concept, right? So,
yep.
so when they're hiring guys down to creating a WPS, down to creating how they're actually going to create their SOP, their form of work, they don't really understand the welding side of it. They're very great with the plumbing and the pipe fitting and everything in between, but the welding side, everyone is clueless about, and basically the whole world, to be honest, because it's such a niche. But
I
yeah,
like how you I like how you said that certified versus qualified. I mean, that's the best way to put it.
yeah,
Like for
absolutely.
sure, Andrew, you're forklift certified.
Oh yeah, I'm forklift certified, man. Like, and
That's it.
qualified. Not just certified. I'm qualified. So you mentioned having an LLC as well as working for someone else. How hard do you find it making time for your side business or working for yourself? Do you find that pretty hard to do?
Yeah, it's tough, especially now with my wife. We've been married just shy of 2 years, and my newborn son. It's difficult to balance it all, but you just got to make do with what you have and do your best. A lot of times I'll like for an example, I built this railing for this customer maybe 40 minutes north of me, and it was on two Harbor Freight tables, and it came out mint, and she was really happy with it.
Oh
So
yeah,
it's just you got to make do with what you have, but
absolutely.
it's definitely a challenging process, both mentally and logistically. I mean, obviously, it's a lot of money you have to invest into starting, but
Yeah.
And how old are you?
I'm 21 years old.
21, and how has your like perspective and outlook on work and life in general changed since you've had that kid?
Oh, it's changed a lot. I think that one, it made me a little more cautious than I normally would be. I definitely would do some more sketchy stuff if I had the opportunity to without hesitation. But now I like, all right, if I do this, am I going to injure myself? You know, I'm a lot more cautious when it comes to how I approach something. And then other than that, not really. I think it makes me more grateful. I think it makes me realize how much things I take for granted. Like walking into a grocery store and having it full of foods from all over the world. Like that's an unheard of experience in the grand scheme of things, you know. So it's a beautiful perspective changer on just being appreciative and grateful. But as for work, it just made me a little more careful. That's all.
Right. And what would have been some of the hardships throughout your career thus far? How long have you been in the industry?
So I went to a Voltech school for 4 years, and now I think it's been just under 4 years of actual work. So about three and
Okay.
a half, 3 and 9 months, I think. So initially I worked with a great company. They had a great gig with the gas company in our state, but they weren't really willing to train me, you know, because I was taught in my technical school stuff that's applicable for most of the industry here, which is manufacturing, structural steel, stuff like
Mm.
that. So I've never seen pipe. I didn't know about fittings. I didn't know about pipe welding, but I had a great opportunity because I worked at this little manufacturing place. After about 5 months, a gentleman there said, "Hey, I got an opportunity for you. I like your work ethic. I have this gentleman by the name of J. A. I'm not going to name him here for obvious reasons, but
Yeah.
he's a great guy." Then I started working with him. He kind of got me started, but he was so busy in the fab shop, he didn't have time to really train me. So I was running 6G coupons, running 7018 downhill because I didn't know you were supposed to run it uphill. So that's just to put it in perspective how hard it was for me to learn initially. But after about 2 to 3 months, I kept grinding every break, every lunch I skipped. I would stay after late as often as they would allow me, which again I'm very blessed for the opportunity because if it wasn't for them, I wouldn't have learned the right way because they weld to API 1104 code, so it's very strict. So all of it was 6010, and they also taught me ASME 9, which is boilers, pressure vessels, stuff like that. So that was huge. And then after that, the hardships kind of fizzled. Once you're qualified and you know what you're doing, and you're confident. The rest of it is just showing up to work on time, having good work ethics, treating the guys with respect, being humble and willing to learn and listen. Just because you're qualified now or certified now doesn't mean you know anything about anything, right? You have to focus up. I don't know anything about anything. I've only been doing this for just shy of 4 years, right? So I need to be humble enough to listen to the foreman when they speak to me, even those who don't know anything about welding. They might have something here or there to give us insight. So it's really important to just, keep your head up and shut up and listen to what you're told to do and put your best foot forward. Obviously don't take crap from anyone, but at the same time you have to be courteous and kind to the people you work with. They've been doing it for much longer than us youngins, you know what I mean? We have to give them their due. I mean, they put blood, sweat, and tears into this. So you got to give them time to, you know, work out how to build a relationship with you, to treat you the way that you'd prefer. Because a lot of the old timers are a little harder, as you guys already know. But
Oh yeah.
it doesn't really bother me anymore, you know.
Yeah.
Right.
But very very well put. Very well put about just sucking it up and putting up with it because they had to do the same thing when they were learning from the old heads back in their day. So, and
Yeah.
it makes you tough, and you have to be tough in this industry.
And honestly, they probably had it harder than us three when they first got in, because now with
Yeah.
modern technology, I mean, shit. I don't run a cordless grinder, but a cordless grinder on out in the field, stuff like you do, that'd probably come in handy. I'm sure they had extension cords running all over and
Yeah.
Yeah.
shit.
And not only that, just the vast expanse of knowledge we get from podcasts or YouTube or, I mean, any number of things.
Right.
Absolutely.
When I first got into the industry, my dad gave me all his old books. I still have them, and I'll probably keep them. And down the line, if I have a kid that's interested in welding, then I'll probably give him the books too, because it's kind of nice to be able to read like what the procedures were back then compared to now. Learn what in
Yeah.
college, and then learn what they did back here, and kind of
And
make
it,
a
and it was
comparison.
some crazy stuff they got away with back then, dude. Some crazy shit they got away with.
Did
But it
they?
held,
Yeah.
and that was the standard for them at the time, and it held. So, hey,
Yeah.
Right.
We've learned so much just through engineering and studying and R&D or whatever. But I've read or at least I tried to read. I read about half of it, three quarters of it, and I just couldn't finish. I read Metals and How to Weld Them. It has so much metallurgy in it that it's so
Mm-hmm.
difficult to fully put that in perspective for someone who's just a layman, just a welder.
Yeah.
So, but it was a great read, and I read that when I was 18, when I just got out of folk tech school. And I would recommend that to anyone, or even just as a reference, because they have so much useful information in there. Like, for example, just the different compositions of alloys, stuff that you don't think would become in handy, but it ends up coming in handy when someone comes up to you and asks you to weld, I don't know, titanium for their dirt bike or something. So it's a
Yeah.
huge, it's a really good resource. That I think it's what the Lincoln Electric Institute makes that. I'm
I
not sure
think
if you guys know.
I think so, Andrew. I don't know about you, but when we were in metallurgy class in college, that's what John handed out to us. Our instructor was metals and how to weld them, and I was not reading that, but I do want to get the book. Um,
See,
It's a
I,
hard
I was
read.
the opposite. I found metallurgy class really interesting. I actually really enjoyed, I mean, John's hard to learn from sometimes because he's a squirrel and he's all over the room and it's like a million different things going on. But I really did enjoy the metallurgy class, not gonna lie.
right, yeah, like you said, he's a squirrel. We had three instructors in our college. Andrew and I went to the same community college for welding, and we had John, who owned I think seven welding supply stores in western Nebraska, and then
Wow.
it's kind of his retirement job. He got bought out by Airgas, and so this is his instructing job is kind of his retirement job, and he was very passionate on like mixing gases yourself. So the year after I left, they started mixing their own bottles of gases, and he loved oxyacetylene and brazing and metallurgy, welder repair, stuff that we should know, but that's not offered at every school. Like welder repair, I wish I paid more attention in that class specifically. John
Yeah,
made it hard, like throwing bolts all over the shop, and you had to find them. But
yeah, he made it unnecessarily complicated for certain things.
right, what would you say was the most valuable maybe procedure, process, or class throughout your VOTEC?
Um, Ironically, this is going to sound really silly, but I think the mathematics. We had a teacher named Mr. Paquito. He was an amazing, amazing teacher, amazing guy. I always gave him shit in class. I was always rude. I was always disrespectful. I never paid attention. And the second I left, said I should have paid attention to those decimals, those fractions, the mathematics that he was teaching us, basic trig, basic geometry, like because we use that stuff every day as pipe fitters. Like for an example, it's simple now because you can plug it into a calculator, but to find a 45 offset, 1.414, right? And then you take out the takeouts of the fittings, like just stuff like that I never thought of, or just being quick on your feet. What is 0.625 equal as a fraction? Just small stuff like that would make my life so much easier.
Yeah.
But when it comes to the actual welding, again, this is what I preach to everyone, especially on my own page. It just comes down to hood time. No matter what my teachers taught me, no matter what they said to me, at least me, I'm hard headed. I'm an idiot. I need to do it myself over and over before I can actually replicate it. So I'm glad my teachers had a good booth set up and gave us a lot of hood time. So,
Right, and you said you've been in the industry 4 years. How long have you had your side business going?
um, I mean, basically from the beginning, but it's only became official this February. I was just doing little side things here and there, nothing crazy, like welding uh, exhaust manifolds for people, just small stuff, little repairs here and there, railing repairs, whatever a welder could get his hands on, a welder will do. So it wasn't really anything serious. And then I made my first railing, and I was like, "Whoa, I can make some money doing this."
Mm-hmm.
So that's when I realized it was worth it. So
Railing's big, man. Especially if you can get into it. Railing, it'll pay some money. And they'll always need railing, which is the crazy part.
yeah,
I saw
absolutely.
I saw like a bed frame on your page. Is that something you did?
So that was a really interesting one. So you see how ornamental and nice it looks. So
Right.
there was an old timer where I live in New Bedford, Mass. If anyone who's from New Bedford, Mass, watching this, I doubt it, but what's up? Uh, there's a lot of Portuguese here. So the Portuguese came here in droves, especially from the Azores. And so there's a lot of ornamental metal workers over here. But a lot of them retired naturally because now they're young and I mean now they're old and all the young guys don't really want to do that. So that bed frame, one of my friends' mothers bought that off of a gentleman who fabricated it, and then she had it in her house. She moved; it wouldn't fit into the new house, So for that one, I cut it apart and we put it inside, and then I had to it's thin gauge metal, so it moves real easy. But we had to put it back together, re-weld it, and then touch it up and repaint it to make it look nice. It was a little bit of a complicated process, but I was glad to be able to get it done. No, I wish I could take credit for that, but it's not my ornamental work. That's way beyond my comprehension, you know.
I was I was planning on asking you because, like I was saying, I'm just getting into my own side work, so I'm still learning like how to order metal from the suppliers and stuff. So, Andrew, this might be something you can answer if you can't, Nathaniel. How I'm wondering, like, if you can buy ornamental pieces like that just from
Yep.
the steel supplier, you can.
King Metals, I believe, is one of them.
That's
But you
it.
can
Yeah.
buy, yeah, you can buy like scroll work and birds in there, and yeah, you can buy quite literally anything you're thinking of right now. You can probably buy it by
Yeah.
the pound. So the aluminum gate shop I used to work at, we would buy most of our ornamental scroll work and caps and stuff like that from them, because when we would build handrails and gates. So
Huh.
I mean, you
Yeah,
can
we use
roll your
King
own scrolls
Metals.
if you want to, but King Metals is really good.
It's hard. I use King Metals too whenever I do handrails. I buy their base plates because it saves time and they're very cheap. Excuse me. The main thing with King Metals is if you're ordering a lot at once, the shipping is egregiously expensive, obviously. So it's better to buy like small ornamental stuff that they could send in a box in like UPS, for example. If it's something like if you're ordering lengths of pipe or lengths of a flat bar or whatever, you're gonna or handrail tube, right? You're gonna have a large bill to incur. I found that out the hard way and I canceled my order. And then I ordered just the small ornamental pieces and then I ordered locally the rest of the metal, which is in hindsight what you should do anyways, is try to get as much local as possible to support your local community. And then after that, go to King Metals because they have great products, man. They have awesome stuff. I've used the caps. I've used ornamental. It's like the things for the balsers. I forget what they're. Excuse me. I forget what they're properly called, but the little ornamental balser things, whatever they're called. I'm not a railing expert by no means. So
Yeah.
What has been the most common job that you've seen out of your side work so far?
a lot of his repairs, just random repairs. Like I've done a heavy duty dump repair for a guy who has it's like a F450 with a dump on the back for metal. So I had to repair one of the hinges that were just completely shot. I've done truck frame repairs, quite a few of those actually, which a lot of guys say is a lot of liability, and they're absolutely right. However, um, one, if you have insurance, and two, if you are qualified and you know what you're doing, I don't really ever worry about it. But when they say that, it makes me think, I'm like, oh, is this going to break? But then again, I'm like, well, I'm pressurizing systems to ridiculous amounts and they're not breaking. Why would this break? If it's a
Exactly.
similar application, I don't know. But I wouldn't
And that,
recommend that though. Go ahead, Andrew, go ahead.
and that's the qualified versus certified.
Yes.
That's where that comes into play. There's different people that are like, well, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. Well, I mean, there's certain people that can do that, and that weld will never crack again, and it'll never be an issue. But
Yeah.
like you said, it depends on how confident you are in yourself, and as well, your business insurance. So
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to prep. The number one thing about welding, aside from like when you're actually welding, the number one thing is being comfortable. But the number two thing I suppose I would say is the preparation. If your metal's not prepped, if it's not beveled, if it's not cleaned, if you didn't whatever you have to do to chemically treat certain alloys or mechanically treat certain alloys, you have to just take the time and do that. Yeah, prepping is like 90% of the battle. For an example, in pipe welding, when you're taking your 6G pipe test, if you cut a piece of pipe, right, and you don't bevel it, you butt it up with a 3/32 gap, and you try to put a root in a fill and cap it, it's gonna fail, 100%. It's just unless you're a nasty welder, which even those guys are gonna struggle with that in position. You just need to take the time to bevel it, prep the inside, the outside. Take your time, tack it up, and then go to town. Even something as simple as feathering your starts and stops on a 6G weld test is such a huge thing. You have to just take your time and do that, or there's a decent chance you're gonna fail. So
See, I don't stick weld now. I haven't stick welded since probably college, and that was in 2023. So last year I graduated. But um, when I was stick welding pipe in college, it was like everybody had their different preferences on fit up, like gap and landing wise.
yes,
How long did it take you to find that money spot for you?
Well, it was a big aha moment. I was the first company I worked for after I got certified. Well, yes, after I got certified, I took my test in ASME 9, and then they were working their way to try to get me to do the API 1104 test because they wanted me to work on the proper gas line because they do a lot of that stuff. And there was a pipeliner there from I think he was from Ohio, out of all the places, and he lives in Mass now. He moved over there, but at the time he was just a sub. And he walked up to me and he was like, "Yeah, don't do it that way." I was like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "That gap's way too big. Let me show you." So he took me over to his bench. He had a 1/16th gap. Just switching it from a 3/32nd gap with 6010 1/8 at 75 to 80 amps versus a 1/16th gap at 90 to 95 amps. It's day and night. It's easier. It's quicker. You're going to have less discontinuities in your weldment. It is so much better, especially if you're going downhill. If you're going uphill, then I'm not sure exactly. I typically would just do the 3/32nd gap for uphill, but I typically weld downhill anyways. Most of the WPSs I work on allow it. And then, that changed everything. I was like, this is great. And there's also another benefit in that, which was a quiet benefit, is that your bevel's smaller, so there's less weld in general, so you're quicker. So now you get, you're the welder on the job that's the quickest, and everyone recognizes that. And it's like, oh, how is this guy quicker? It's just this little difference, just this little amount of gap makes such a big difference. So
Right. That makes sense.
yeah,
When you're doing your side work like repairs, you said on handrails and stuff like that, are you taking the full assembly out, or do you go to the site and weld it?
it depends on what it is. Most of the time, I'm mobile, so wherever they are, I'm that's where I'm at. I think once or twice I've took it home and touched it up at home and then brought it back. But for something like handrails, that would really suck to take it apart. At that point, I tell them to just rebuild it.
Right.
Excuse me, guys. I tell them to just rebuild it because that's kind of ridiculous. All the time it would take. It'd probably be similar pricing, to be honest, rather than just me creating a new handrail for them. But a lot of the repairs I do here are like, I know you guys don't know anything about Massachusetts, but New Bedford's not an exactly rich area, so a lot of the people here are on a budget and they're just trying to get it repaired for their insurance, which makes it's totally understandable, makes a lot of sense. So I'll go there, I'll cut out the old rotted supports or the old. A lot of guys use tubing, square tubing for their handrails. I don't like to do that. I prefer to use solid square. I feel like it just lasts longer and it's more reliable. But who am I? So I normally cut that out and replace it with solid square, and then I'll put a base plate, put some wedge anchors in, call it a day. If they want to epoxy and cement it, we could do that too, obviously. But a lot of it is on site. As a side business, you'll find this pretty soon, Bryn. You need to kind of be mobile. You have to be able to go to their house. I use ESOB 200 IP Pro, and it runs off 110 like butter. And you could do. I did X-ray coupons with that thing, 6 inch get
Holy
40.
shit.
Yeah, it's such a good machine, man. It's such a good machine. I've done X-ray coupons several times. I've done most of my field welds with that, and if you have 220 power, even better. But
Yeah, that's what was going to be my next question, is if you had a engine driven or if you were running like a normal machine with a generator. But yeah, that does make sense.
yeah, so I don't know how it is. Obviously, it's going to fluctuate depending on state to state. But here in Massachusetts, uh, for residential work, which is kind of all the side work you're going to really have, unless you get a really good gig, um, is your customer already knows you're going to use the power. It's kind of like part of the thing. So when I plug it in, I'm anticipating it's only 110 power. This is really advanced technology. It's not going to pop, and it almost never does. I think I've had one customer have their circuit trip one time, but it runs like, for an example, you could run 3/32 7018 no problem, and you could run 1/8 6010 no problem. So that being said, you could do quite a bit with that, and you could also switch it over to high frequency TIG on 110, and you could do some pretty thick stuff, whether it's stainless or all sorts of alloys. So it's a great machine. It's probably my favorite machine for like traveling work. What I always say, this is just my opinion, take this with a huge grain of salt. Again, I've only had 4 years in this. I think for engine driven welders, Lincoln is by far the best. For shop welders that you have an unlimited budget, Miller is by far the best. And for mobile welders, for you're going here to here to here to here around the job site, you got to drag it around with you. ESOB is just amazing. ESOB small welders are like pound for pound, dollar for dollar, the best on the market. The IP Pro is probably better than the Max Star, because a Max Star that is equivalent to that is so much more expensive. The IP Pro is like 1,400, 1,300 bucks in my area, and the Max Star of the same caliber is like $5,000. So it's like, why would I even waste my money on a Magstar when the IP Pro gives me the same results? And it's ESOP. I mean, from what I know, I'm pretty sure they're the inventors of SMAW welding, right? So they have this technology down. So it's a great company, man. I love their machines. I use it a lot, so I'm very, very biased. So take that with a grain of salt, but
And I'd assume you're probably running an extension cord most of the time, right?
sometimes what I prefer to do is plug it in directly and then run lead out because obviously the more extension cords, more chance of tripping. More lead, no problem. Just turn up a little bit, you know. I'm obviously
Yeah.
also not that far from where I'm welding typically, especially in a residential application. Like the plug's right there and I'm welding right there. You know, it's like I'm typically fine with 10 feet, 20 feet of lead, and I'm having no issues at all. But I prefer to run the lead out. That way the machine doesn't trip. I'm trying to be as least of an inconvenience to the customer as possible and as respectful and as courteous of their time as possible. So, you know, I don't want to be like, hey, you know, you got to come down again. You know, your power tripped. Like, that really sucks. So I
Right.
always check up ahead of time. Hey, do you have access to 110 power? Do you have access to 220 power? How reliable is it? What do you run on it? I always check because I don't want the customer to be surprised when I show up and I don't have a gas welder because the gas welder is mainly for, you know, commercial and industrial applications.
Right. Do you so other than your welder obviously and maybe a grinder or something like that, what has been your most valuable tool when it comes to your side work?
Squares, man. Squares. Gotta buy good levels and squares. Fitting tools, that's the big thing. I have nice speed squares, framing squares, a bevel square. I have a digital bevel square. It's really useful for finding. Like some old handrails, when you're replacing them, the angle's way off. They didn't follow code at all. So you have to kind of make it work. So those are great fitting tools, measuring tools. Those are my favorite, really. Have you seen that digital tool? It's like it's a tape measure, but you can pull it and like it save a measurement. Pull it, save a measurement. Have you seen that?
Yeah.
That thing's
Yeah.
awesome. I want to get one.
We had Chris from Wobros on the podcast twice now. Do you know who that is?
That guy's awesome. I follow him. I texted him for advice once or twice when I was first starting Castro Welding on like the social media side. He's funny, dude. His content's great.
Yeah, he has one of those. If that's what you're referring to, his digital tape measure. That's
That's
funny.
awesome. I
He
want to
he
buy one.
he made a video and then it was like, have you ever seen a tape measure have to update update the software on a tape measure? But yeah, he's the only guy to be a repeat guest on our podcast this
Yeah.
far.
He's a stud, man. He's great. I love his. I
Yeah, he
love
is
his.
awesome.
His branding is so good, man. For Wolbros
Yeah.
apparel, his
Yeah,
branding is so good.
yeah. I was on the phone with him last night because he's going to Orlando for Fab Tech and he went to Chicago last year for one day. He drove from Iowa, but this year he was like, "What is your housing situation in Florida?" And I was like, "Dude, we're 2 weeks out. Like this is an Andrew and I problem from Atlanta in 2022. Uh, we waited completely last minute to plan, and FabTech recommends hotels, and we just had to get such an expensive one. I don't remember how much it was, but it was crazy. And Andrew, I think you might have been 20 or 19, and I was
I
like
was 20.
17.
Yeah.
Okay, I
Well,
was
yeah, I'd have been 20
18
at the
then,
time.
I think. But yeah, so it was so hard to get a hotel that would take somebody under 21.
Yeah, it was a bitch.
Yeah, but Chris is a great guy. He's funny. Yeah, that is cool. You were talking about liability insurance and the LLC a little bit. Did you shop around for liability insurance quite a bit?
No, I went straight to Next. I saw the ads and I was sold, and then I went there and I was like, "This is a great price," and I didn't need anything else. You know, it was like a million. It was like I don't know the specifics exactly. I think it was 1 million in general liability for a relatively low price. I mean, it was very affordable. I checked them out. I think it's just NXT. It's a blue logo. I'm sure you've seen them on ads. They'll be once you start talking about this, Google's gonna be listening. They're gonna put it on your YouTube. It's gonna say Jobber's gonna pop up, Next Insurance is gonna pop up, but they're actually great. I had no problems with them. They were very quick to give you everything you need, the proof of insurance and whatnot. Yeah, so it was great.
And have you had to deal with anything with the insurance yet?
God, thank God, but no, I haven't. My teacher, my teacher at Voctech, he owns a company also. He does a lot of really good high end ornamental work for high end customers in the south side of Rhode Island on the beach basically. Um, and he had one little run in with that where he had someone working for him and they were grinding, and it went into the glass door. But aside from him, I haven't met anyone who's really had to have any claims, you know. It's I mean, if you do your job right, you protect your work area. I bring fire blankets, I bring welding shields, and just make sure that you're cautious of where you're at. A fire extinguisher, obviously, right? Just kind of focus up. On Massachusetts, we're particularly careful about that because we had fires that resulted in many deaths in Boston. So now we have a mandatory hot work certs for all welders in the state of Mass. So you have to have a hot work certification through NFPA. Um, so we all have those, and you know we just try our best to stay safe. But no, luckily, and I hope you're not jinxing it here, Bryn. But there's no need for insurance claim. You know.
I knocked on wood for you, by the way.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I
But
appreciate it.
what about the LLC? What was it like registering and setting that up?
It's so stupid. The way the state of Mass does it is ridiculous. It has. I mean, I have to talk to the whoever wrote up this bill to understand it, but it's $500 flat to become registered, which I think is one of the most expensive in all of the states. You need a mandatory accountant on file at all times. You need a mandatory. You like, there's so much bull crap with opening LLC in the state of Mass. They make it so hard. There's so much red tape, which again, I don't know why, but I'd have to ask them because I'm sure they have a reason. For me, it was bad. You know, if I didn't need to do that, I wouldn't have done that. But it's just kind of like if you want to take it to the next level, you have to be legit. You have to pay your taxes. You have to do the right thing. You know, and also like I didn't feel right not having it set up properly because now I was doing a little bit more work. I was like, okay, let me have this all set up. You know, so it's just a big thing about compliance with the state of Mass. They're very difficult. You know, it's one of those states in which you have to really cover your ass. You know.
And LLC stands for limited liability company, right?
That's
So,
it. Yeah.
so
Yep.
what kind of makes the difference between being registered as a limited liability company versus liability insurance?
So from what I understand is that an LLC, like for an example, I'm the owner, but I'm also an employee, right? So as an LLC owner, I have limited liability to that which happens as a result of whomever's working in the company, right? So it kind of separates you and your business as an entity. So if someone were to sue Castro Welding, I don't know why we're talking about this, but they would sue just Castro Welding and not me, unless they can prove that I had like a very large part in whatever they're suing me about, you know, like if I was stealing money from them or if I caused a huge liability problem going on, like that would be something they'd have to prove that I was grossly negligent or I did it with like malicious intent. From my understanding of the law, there's a lot of really good YouTubers that talk about it. I decided LLC because sole proprietorship was a lot more risky. So like you're automatically a sole proprietor if you're doing work under your own name, but you still have to go through a bunch of legal hoops in Mass anyways. So
Right. Huh. That's a that's a lot, man. I'm gonna have to do a lot of research. Obviously,
well,
nothing is all that serious right now. Like this is just
exactly.
a 2 week decision, two
Yeah.
weeks ago.
Yeah. So like for you, what I'd recommend, especially in the state of Nebraska, what I'd recommend is doing side work for people you know, family, friends, or just that random customer who calls you. Do as much of it as you can without becoming an entity yet. And then when you do enough of it that the tax starts to matter, then become registered. You know, if you're only doing 2 grand in welding work a year, you're just doing favors. You know what I mean? You don't need the entity. You're just doing favors. Like that's not a legal matter. So that would be my advice. But obviously, you probably consult with someone who knows a lot more about the law in Nebraska because I don't want to get you in trouble.
Yeah. And like, how'd you kind of get your name out there in the beginning? Is it to word of mouth now?
A lot of it was word of mouth. A lot of it was I made a website through Squarespace. I had my wife help me with that, and we built that, and it came out pretty nice. And then just people Googling welders in the area, and I popped up. A lot of times was just like recommendations. I have only 5-star reviews so far, which has been great. A lot of customers don't leave reviews, which sucks, but those who have left 5-star, which is cool. And then The other thing is paid ads, man. I hate to say it, but if you have saved up money, paid ads is the money makes the world go round. You know, that's the way to move things. If you have, like for an example, my Castro Welding page was at 6 grand, 6,000, excuse me, 6,000 followers, and then my son was born, so I took 2 months off. I lost like a couple hundred. I figure if I had paid ads, it would grow exponentially, right? So it's just money makes the world go around. You kind of have to suck it up and do some paid ads if you're serious about getting work. But where like you don't need that or you're trying to do it more naturally, then obviously the best way to do is cold outreach. Just build an email list, build a call list, and just call people. There's a great guy who's a business guru, I suppose. His name's Alex Hormozy. He talks about it. He says, from what I remember, there's 3 ways to reach customers. There's cold outreach, there's warm outreach, and there's word of mouth. So that's kind of like the big way to get customers. It's like you're someone you know, that's warm outreach. Like if you text Andrew, hey Andrew, you got anything that you need me to weld up? Like that's warm outreach. You know, you're already friends, family, or you say, hey Andrew, do you have anyone that you would know that needs help? Because now they don't feel like you're attacking them. They're not on the defense anymore. So now they open up and they say, oh, actually, I need that, what you're asking me to pass on to my friend. And then cold outreach is obvious. You just got to call, email, text, walk up on knocking people's doors, put up signs and whatnot. And then paid ads and word of mouth, you know. So.
Right. And before the podcast started, you were kind of talking about how you've successfully trained 5 or 6 welders that are now welding full time. How did that come about?
It was awesome. It's just my buddies, man. A lot of them were my good friends at the time. God bless them. They're doing great now. And one of them's managing the welding shop where he's at now. You know, he's doing great. It's a little manufacturing shop, and he's managing the whole welding floor now. So, and the other 2 gentlemen are welding full time at that same spot. And then my little brother was the 4th person. He's at a different mechanical contractor that I used to work for. He's close to becoming 6G certified, but he's a good welder. He's more on the technical aspect, more on the math and the fabrication side. And then right now I'm training this gentleman in my job right now. He just took his first weld test. He had a couple issues on the bottom, so we're gonna retest them. But his coupon looks great. I posted it on my story. I'm sure a few people have seen it, but yeah, he did great. He learned quick. So yeah.
Is the pipe fitters union pretty big up there?
Huge. Everything's union. I don't work for a union company, so again, just a disclaimer for my personal bias. I'm non-union again. But as we proceed, yeah, everything up here is union. In fact, it gets a little cultish where it's like, you're not union? Like, you're not, this is a union job. It's like, all right, buddy, relax. You know what I mean? Last time I checked, we're the contractors for this section, you know? So, but overall, there's different scenarios for everyone, you know? Depends on what you want to do. The union's great, but so is some mechanical contractors that are non-union. You know, it's give or take what you have and what you will do. The only thing I don't like is how people can arbitrarily unionize companies. I feel like that's a little unfair where you could just make a vote. It's like you built this company and then people could come in. I mean, they're now part of your team, but basically strangers could come in and then vote to take over your company, basically to make it unionized. Like that doesn't sit right with me. But aside from that, the union's great, man. A lot of people make killer money there, especially in Mass. They make stupid money. But at the same time, there's a lot of different benefits that they're not getting at. So it's like give or take, you know. It's a lot of personal choice, personal situation that you have to really address your situation. But yeah.
What helped you make that decision to go non-union as opposed to union?
I think my entrepreneurial side, like at my core, I'm a entrepreneur. Like that's what I want to do. That's all I care about, you know. So as a union, they kind of dissuade that. Like for an example, again, if you're a pipe fitter union watching this, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but for an example, if you want to get your master's pipe fitter's license, they're kind of like, well, why are you doing that? Because to get that, it's basically just open a business. There's no other reason. It's either open a business or be in a management position and have your license hang on the wall. Like those are the only 2 reasons you get a master's license. You get your journeyman to work, you get your master's to open a company. So it's small stuff like that it's like it disincentivizes that. Also, the growth rate is set, which is great once you get to the end of it, right? Once you get to the end of it, you're at a huge pay rate. But in the beginning of it, you're not making much. Whereas if you go non-union and you say, hey, I'm 19 years old, but I'm qualified, I'm nasty, they'll still give you $40, $35, $30 an hour. Obviously, they're not going to give you a truck because they probably don't trust you at 19. But like they'll still pay you the big boy dollars, you know? So that was the big differentiator. It was like, okay, if I can become a competent, qualified welder, if I can do this procedure, learn how it's done, and replicate it consistently, then I'm immediately going to get the pay that the market pays for. It's that simple. It's not even a conversation. If a company's not willing to pay you what you're worth, ask the market and someone will pay you. You know what I mean? That's just how it works. I don't make up the prices and your company don't make up the prices. The market makes up the prices and it's set and it fluctuates depending on the market. So you have to always be evaluating the market, see where your skill set's at and how much you're worth, you know, because it's a really big thing to understand that. And if your company is no longer reflecting what the market reflects, then, you know, it's time to move on. Which the union, they get you know, they lobby for wage increases and benefit up increases and stuff like that, which is great. But for me, I can't see myself sitting there for 5 years before I could get paid. You know, I just couldn't, especially now with the wife and the kid. I got to take care of rent to pay and food to put on the table. I just couldn't do it. Like financially, I couldn't do it. My wife stays home with the baby. I just financially I couldn't do it. Maybe at the end of the 5 years, great, but right now, nah.
Right.
Yeah.
What do you think has been the coolest or your personal favorite project that you've ever gotten to work on? The opportunity, whether it be side work or for the 9 to 5 company.
Dude, that's a great question. I have to say it's a tie between. If I'd have to pick one, it's this recent job I did with 16 inch. If I had to pick one, it was very unique. They gave me a lot of leeway with how we're gonna do the procedure, and because of that, we were able to save a lot of money and time. The weld was predicted to cost a lot more than it did. I saved them a lot of time because again, this is why it's so important to understand the theoretical side of welding. Instead of filling it with, let's say, 1/8 70/18, the deposition rate is so much faster on 316 60/10. It burns quicker, it deposits faster, and it's still going to shoot when they go to X-ray it. So if we can change that in the WPS, we're good. And now we're making a weld, saving more money, saving more time, and using less material. So that was a blessing to be a part of. And then other than that, man, the 16 inch was so fun to put the root pass in. It's so satisfying, and you're doing it all day, and it just feels so good. Once you get that root pass in, I go straight to fill it, hot fill and cap it. It's just so satisfying, man. That's the big thing about welding that I love. The root pass, just hearing that, it's awesome. It's like the best thing ever, man. It's
Dude, I
awesome.
can't tell you how much I related when you said that you found the sweet spot for your gap. Because for me, it was the same thing. I'm in school. I'm pissed off. I can't find a gap. I can't lay a root in. I'm blowing out the pipe, keyholing like a motherfucker. And I'm like, screw it. I'm going to slam it together a little bit more. Slam it together. You know, did a pass. I was like, okay, that's not bad. Turned it up a little bit. And like you said, you heard that. So it's like, fuck yeah, I got this. Like
Yeah.
as I'm running that freaking route, I'm like, I got this motherfucker. So
Yeah.
it's
It's the
just like
best feeling in the
those
world.
yeah, those moments of like I got this is what really keeps me going in this industry because like days can be really frustrating when your math doesn't math or where you're off or where you didn't have a takeoff correct and then you build to those days where you have less and less of that and then you have those I got it moments and it really just it spurs me on in this industry. So what really keeps you a welder going.
What industry are you in, Andrew?
So I'm working for myself. I do a lot of mass fabrication, and then a little bit of repair and side work. Um,
Nice.
just just like you, just trying to find a niche or an entrepreneur niche, and I'm going for it. So
Oh
because
yeah.
I don't like working for other people. And then I build custom welding hoods as well. That's my main business. I build custom welding hoods with custom leather work on it. So
Oh, I saw that. I was just looking at your page before we hopped on.
yeah,
It
so
looks great, man.
that's what everybody sees on social media, but 10 hours out of the day, I'm in the shop, fabricating. So
Oh
that's what I
yeah.
really like to do.
You should post more of the fabrication side, Andrew.
I need to. I don't know. I just don't think people want to see that, or I just leave the page as welding hoods. But I really should.
Even
'Cause,
something as simple as like a shop tour. Now that you bought that huge bandsaw.
dude, yeah, that bandsaw is freaking massive. But I mean, I've amassed a pretty good bit of tools. But what I really like is the mass fabrication. I don't like too much of the custom stuff, but I don't know. I mean, I really enjoy doing that stuff. So,
Hmm. And what was that second job that you said it was almost a tie with Nathaniel on your favorite project?
We worked at I can't say the name. I think I signed an NDA actually, but we worked at this place, and they were running stainless steel, and it was my first time being able to weld just stainless steel in a job, and I was like, oh, this is great. So I kind of fudged my way there. It was all socket weld, so it was really easy, nothing impressive. It's nothing crazy. I'm not doing open root 6G stainless X-ray welds yet, but at that point, I was 19. It was like my first job where I was given a lot more freedom to kind of do my thing and try to contribute to the job. And the foreman I was with was by far one of my favorite foremen I've ever worked with. And he was great, man. He's an awesome welder. But that was a lot of stainless steel welding, a lot of socket welding, a lot of in position welding. The installation process was fun because a lot of times as a pipe welder you're going to weld and then you're not going to be able to do the install. But in this scenario we were able to come back and install. It was great. It was great to see it all be put together.
Nice. Yeah, that's cool. We got around 45 minutes of great footage. Here's one question we ask every guest before we end the show. What is your favorite genre of music to listen to while you work or weld?
It'd have to be country, man. I never was a country boy growing up, but recently I was introduced to it about 2 years ago.
Yes,
I grew
sir.
up in the hood, for lack of a better term. So I never listened to country. I listened to a lot of hip hop, a lot of R&B, a lot of mainly just rap. But getting into hard rock, getting into country, I was like, oh, so this music is pretty good. So I think when I weld, man, I like listening to some Zach Bryan. My favorite one is Tyler Childers. I can't pronounce his name. His voice is amazing. I like Flatland Cavalry. They make great music. There's some awesome artists. Culture Wall, he's amazing, dude. His voice is crazy. But yeah, man.
All, really solid picks, man. All like on the nail picks right there,
That's
dude.
it.
I agree.
And for those listeners that haven't heard of you, where can they find you at?
Yeah, so you can check me out on Instagram. My handle is Castro Welding. I think it's Castro __ welding. And then I'm also on TikTok on the same tag. And then CastroWelding.com. If you're local, check me out. But I appreciate you spending some time with me today, guys.
Yeah, man. Thank you. And for the viewers listening, if you're looking for any edge welding cups, Pyrex or glass or quartz TIG welding cups, code BRINWELDS15 and the link in the description. If you're interested in Everlast welder and you want the upgraded Nova TIG torch and foot pedal kit, link in the description as well. That'll be upgraded free of additional charge or if you order through that link. And Andrew?
And for any and all custom welding hood needs, head on over to SouthernLeatherworks.net and Southern Leatherworks on all social media platforms for possibly some fabrication now that I've been spurred into it. Thank you, Nathaniel, for coming on. We really had a great time talking about all these things with you. And yeah, we look forward to hearing from you again.